All right. Hello and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon from where you are watching right now. Today, we have a special webinar regarding clean energy and transition, Greece and the Balkans as a regional solar hubs. So, as we may know, solar is a big topic to cover during this webinar. And of course, Balkans and especially Greece has a diverse of solar hub, especially regarding in the Balkans. And the Balkans and Greece are emerging, of course, as a dynamic front runners in solar energy development. Right now, today, we have a special speaker, of course, Emil Treppen, an account executive at Rated Power. Rated Power is, of course, one of the most important company we have in the Balkans region, and of course, within the Ninth Balkans Energy Summit that is happening in Greece from the 29th to the 30th of April. And of course, Emil, I'm leaving the ground for you to introduce yourself and Rated Power.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Karam, for having me here. And good afternoon or good morning, depending where you are, to everyone listening. I'm Emil, as you said, account executive at Rated Power, specifically covering Italy, Central Eastern Europe, and Balkans. And that's why we're going to be here talking about Balkans. Rated Power is a software company that, along with our mother company, Inverus, we are part of the largest solar tech energy and solar tech company in the world. Therefore, dealing with everything that goes from renewable energies to solar, wind, BESS. What we do specifically is a cloud-based software that helps companies streamlining the design of PV and BESS plan. So bringing you from origination to detailed engineering in a matter of seconds, giving you all the type of analysis that you need from the engineering point of view up until financial side, which is also one of the topic we're going to cover in Greece at the 9th Balkans Energy Summit, indeed.
Mm-hmm. Sounds great, Emil. I mean, we're so excited to see the presentation during the summit. And of course, the softwares that Rated Power uses very efficient, and we would like to see it more during the summit. Of course, I'm going to start, with a question regarding the digital tools that the, Rated Power is currently using. So right now, I would like to ask you, how are the digital tools like Rated Power, PV design platform are transforming the solar project, and are planned and being executed in emerging markets like the Balkans. So as you know, Balkans has a lot of countries in it, and each country has a specific kind of a need regarding the software. And I want you really to explain the softwares that Rated Power is using to help the renewable companies, or literally any kind of company that is willing to use this software for their own needs. Because of course, when we're talking about the Balkans, it's a very complex region that has a lot of needs, and we want to see how can the software really help based on the country's need and the company's needs, of course, regarding their specific region.
Absolutely, and thank you for the question, Karen. Well, I would like to start by the end of this question. Usually, we start from the very first words. I would like to take it from the end. You mentioned that emerging markets, which I think is the key word in this question. When we're talking about emerging markets, like countries that are in the Balkans, we usually have a double view on this. It means a lot of potential, a lot of opportunities incoming right now and in the next few years, but at the same time, a lot of challenges. Talking about framework challenges, regulations that are still evolving, of course, in emerging markets. We have, potential critical infrastructures that are not as developed as they might be in other countries. And therefore, it is clear that in such a context, even the slightest mistake or inefficiency can really jeopardize the entire viability, but also the entire project planning in when it comes to PV plants and BESS, also battery storage plants. And this is where Rated Power comes in, really, where it can really become transformative. Because indeed, the whole reason why Rated Power was born was to make the life of engineers, C-level executives at company much easier, allowing them to perform tasks that normally with traditional manual tool would have required days, if not weeks, in a matter of seconds and hours. So that is where rated power comes in. And you talked about how we need to fit the different needs that the Balkans have, and indeed, I can tell you exactly. I can definitely quote on that we see every day different needs arising in the region. Um, how rated power really plays in this picture is, as I was saying before, to streamlining what your project engineering is. So, starting from the very early stages with origination, with a simple manual task that you were doing before, taking you hours, the idea here is to instead just upload your own sites, going through that pre screening phase, and in a matter of minutes obtaining a complete layout. So when it comes to documents for permitting, connection grid request, financial analysis, having a whole variety of documents and layouts ready for you to be used. What we have seen from our customers is that we can reduce the layout and design time by 90%, allowing companies to arrive to a connection grid request from a screening phase in around 1 hour and 30 minutes. That means significantly reducing the time that a company can spend on a project, meaning you can allocate better the resources, human and, of course, monetary resources, and focusing on the tasks that have the priority in the company. Normally, I was speaking right before this webinar actually with a company from Kosovo that was telling me that they were taking around 5 to 7 days to have an entire layout and present those documentation to the TSOs. What we can do here is to really compress that amount of time and bring you to those stages in a matter of minutes. This also, I will say, Karam, plays in what the theory of change principle. I don't know if you ever heard about this in the big infrastructure project, but the idea is that if you are able to maximize the speed and the efficiency in the early stages, then you will not incur in an exponential increase of costs when you get to later stages of the process. And that's where really rated power fits in. We want you to maximize the speed and at the same time the efficiency in the early stages of your project, so that then when it comes to detailed engineering, you have already 70% of your workflow done in a matter of hours. That's really what we're trying to do here.
Mhm. I mean, thank you, Emil. I think this software can really help a lot of companies, especially during the Balkans. But also, I'm thinking in terms of efficiency and speed, this is a very, good takeaway or something that we need to discuss. Speed and efficiency in every kind of company is important, especially if it's working in solar and renewables. Not only the big companies, but also the startup companies, or that the ones that they have, for example, 20 to 30 employees. They are like very efficient on time, so this software can really help them maximize the impact and maximize the actual investment, and get the actual return on investment from using these softwares, other than relying on more employees and more time. And of course, the Balkans region has a lot of things going on, and especially with regulations. And especially during 2025, there's a lot of changes and regulations depending on the country, and that's why the software can also have a great impact with efficiency regarding each country's regulation. And of course, I think the software can give you like a detailed report at the end with the exact KPIs, return on investment, what did the software do to you, etc. And this report is the most important thing at the end of each project to know. What is this report having, what did we do in the region, etc., and how we can take it to the next step and the shortest amount as possible, of course. But with this stuff, there's a lot of good things and bad things as well. But I'm pretty sure in the software, it's mostly there. You can see everything with numbers, and numbers won't lie, and you can immediately tell the return on investment. But I really wanted to ask regarding the challenges. if there is any kind of challenges when you are using the software and the pre-construction phase, or for example, any kind of things that you had a case study with that specific Balkanic country or any country that has a different regulation that you need to adjust the software, or if the software can really give you the full detailed report based on the region itself as well.
Well, you mentioned exactly the challenges. Of course, having a software that is automatic and try to speed up your workflow, of course, present with some challenges too. You mentioned the pre-construction phase. One of the most common challenges that we are facing and we are seeing companies facing, not just in the Balkans, but in general in Europe and even outside Europe, is that there are a lot of projects that are actually ready to build, but there's no investor willing to assume the risk and finance those projects. And there is where, as you mentioned, the financial KPIs really kick in, because you need to present, here the light abandoning me, you really need to present those investors with a compelling business case on why that project is worth the return on investment. And that is where the financial KPIs plays a role, where we can present those companies a very detailed analysis on capex, return on investment, the IRR, and also operational costs, based not only on the inputs that we provide, for example, from in this case IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, but also based on their inputs. This means that it is a software that, of course, presents some, let's say, level of standardization, but the customer and the company will be able to manually modify and customize these inputs in order to better reflect their market situation. Because that's indeed the whole aim. The idea is to provide you with the best base and standardization possible for you then to just adjust the inputs that you need and then go and actually overcome this challenge. And I only mentioned one, but talking about documentation, also the lack of technical documentation for the permitting process is a really big challenge that companies are facing in the pre-construction. Imagine having to build, hundreds of pages of documentation alone and by hand. So doing everything manually, that is one of the hardest process that we are observing, not only in Italy, for example, but in the Balkans too. And that is why we want to provide you with a package of documentation that is ready to use, because that's the whole philosophy of the software. We provide you something that is ready to use, and if you have a specific need, then you can customize it. So that's the whole idea of trying to overcome these challenges by providing you a solution that takes the benefits of standardization when it comes to make it faster, but at the same time is flexible enough to make it tailored for your needs and the challenges that, of course, companies are facing in the pre-construction phase.
Exactly, Emil. I think the paperwork is indeed the most challenging thing in the Balkans as well. For example, going to that specific building and getting the paperwork done, especially the languages in the Balkans, of course. So that's why I think documentation and paperwork, even to speed up the process, right? If it takes you 2 months, I think with the software, with the documentation, even it's more let's say legally submitted, and it's more quicker with a smoother kind of a process, because when we're talking about the Balkans, we're talking about a region that has also a lot of languages going on, and it's hard to navigate without because we're entering the market, right? So it's hard to navigate without actually being
Exactly.
from the market itself. To be able to invest in the Balkans region, you need to know and understand and do the research first, and then of course you can invest within the Balkans region. And with the rated power software, you can get the documentation that help with the regulations, with getting the permit, etc. And I think that is the most amazing thing, to have this maximized, especially if you are a small to a mid company. This is when you need it the most, and of course, like, this is when the software comes in hand. But when we're talking about Emma, when we're talking about really the rated power software, or any kind of software that we are using in the Balkans region or in Europe, for example, rated power works across Italy and Central Europe. But what kind of trends or best practices could, accelerate solar expansion in the Balkans specifically. Because when we're talking about Balkans, as I said, there's a lot of regulations going on. So we want to see, what kind of best practices, if you remember any specific company from a specific, country in the Balkans that you had a beautiful case study, or how did you help them creating this, software with their impact, and then they successfully entered the market.
Absolutely. And this is a great question, honestly. So thank you for asking me this, because indeed we always talk about, how the solar industry is booming and there is an expansion, but we rarely talk about what are the best practices that can facilitate this expansion. And what we have seen is that there are a big set of practices that we have observed all around Europe, not just in the Balkans, that can actually, try and speed up solar expansions, but at the same time making it also more reliable, because we know it's a very uncertain sector. And to come back to your point about if we have seen even specific examples of this, I just had a talk a few days ago in during one of our event here in Madrid, sponsored by Rated Power Pulse, with a company called Aboitiz Power, an IPP from the Philippines that is now looking to invest in the Balkans. And we were asked a lot of questions about what is the outlook there, what can we see as a potential reason to expand there. And what we have really seen is that a key best practice and a key trend that is accelerating renewables, and especially solar in the Balkans, is state incentives, which are fundamental, and state funding, which are really playing a crucial role in expanding renewable energy, in bringing in more projects for companies, and at the same time doing, a great service to consumers to lower, energy costs and energy bills. And I think Greece is playing a fantastic role in this, putting up very high targets. I believe I read a few days ago 81% of power, actually powered by renewables by 2030. The European Union also is actually investing a lot, and approved recently a 6 billion fund for companies like Albania, Kosovo, Montenegro to invest in renewable energy. So having this financial backbone from state authorities and also European authorities, I think it can really make a difference to expand solar in the region, and at the same time empowering companies to have a more reliable standard. Because in the end, state authorities need to set that standard, and companies need to then compete within those standards. So I think a more, I will say, proactive approach by state authorities and also European institution is much needed, and it's bringing a lot of positive results. Not only that, however, because of course, like state incentives are one part, and trying to fund the expansion of solar is one thing, but there are also very specific best practices that we have observed in our country that can work and are not yet implemented, for example, in the Balkans. One that we have recently observed is a regional centric approach that has been established in Italy and allowed to create regional hubs independently from what the government regulations were. And I think this kind of best practice could really play into a region that is very fragmented, like the Balkans, but that at the same time has the potentiality of creating regional hubs. This is also one of the title of the webinar. I always imagine, Greek regions and provinces being able to push more, to go beyond what's the national regulations, and trying to, create their own regional centric approach, so that we can really create those center of excellence in the region. A little bit of a Silicon Valley of solar energy, let's say, in the Balkans. That I think will be really a good practice that could, also overcome some challenges that sometimes countries and national governments have to incur in due to bureaucracy or lack of funding, for example.
Mhm. No, 100%, Emil. When we're talking about this, there is a lot of, even governments, now I'm thinking about it, like, right, there's specific governments that is in need of certain kind of reports, that they don't have enough capacity or even resources, that they have, let's say, a specific resources, right? But they are very limited into where, how can they share it. And of course, using such softwares is more secured for them. It's more detailed. They want to know the numbers, and our, of course, in solar companies, the most important thing is numbers, right? What did we do? How did we do it? When did we increase the things, the numbers, anything that is numbers related, everyone loves them, right? But there is specific, even it can help with the vision and ambition of the company or the government itself. And the ninth Balkans Energy Summit, there's a lot of government showcases, and we have mostly all of the Balkanic governments actually joining us during the event. So they can even, see how the software can actually help with the governmental goals during their own government, right? If they have a specific goal to reach, or if they have a specific plan during their campaign, they can definitely use the software to even help them with the campaign itself. So we're not talking even about not only companies but also governments, how we can help the governments, how we can help specific, startup companies, mid-range, and even of course the big companies itself. Usually the big companies have much more resources, and they are much more flexible with the timing, because they can even, specific, they have a specific kind of a timelines to approach with a lot of capacities. But mainly for the Balkans, it's very, a need for it as well. But mainly, ML, I wanted to really ask, how does the software contribute, but not only to the faster development, but to also like a more bankable and cost efficient, right? What we said till now is it's more efficient. It will make your things faster. You will get the detailed report. It will help you with the documentation, with legalization, etc. But I wanted to ask in terms of, let's say, financing, anything finance related, bankable, how we can make it more cost efficient, and we send it to the finance department that, okay, this is more, finance efficient. We're not spending more than we need, because, for example, we use the software other than having 10 employees that is doing it in 6 months of a period. And during these 6 months, we need to have A, B, C, Y, X, Y, Z. And then we need, of course, we have holidays, etc. And then at the end, we are not sure about the report, right? This is exactly coming, let's say, from a company, from a solar company. And then we have the software that, of course, is going to give us the result in 2 months with the paperwork. And it's going to give us more a cost efficient project. So we can see how much it's going to cost, and we take it from there, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And you better describe than probably what I will do, what the challenge here really is, is arriving to the late stage of the project where you have to actually have all those documentation to say, okay, is that project, feasible? Can we present that project to a financial institution? Can investors rely on the data that we're giving them? Well, it's clearly that having a whole team that needs to spend hours and hours to do this, it's really time consuming. And what we really need to think here is that rated power is not just an engineering tool. Many people think that what we do is simple basic engineer and calculation on optimization of engineer, but rated power can easily be transformed in a decision making tool. So rather than arriving at the end of the project, having to do all those analysis and maybe realizing that your project is not actually, how you expected it to be, you can have those pre-feasibility checks at the very beginning of the projects, because that's what rated power allows you to do. The idea here is to empower not only engineers, but also executives at company and financial departments to transform the software in a proper decision-making tool. Where you start actually studying the feasibility of the project in the very early stages, you can access those financial data. And I was mentioning before, CAPEX, OPEX, return on investment, the cash flow, you name it. We have an entire financial analysis ready for you at any stage of the project. That's what really makes rated power unique, because the idea is that every single modification you do inside the software that reflects automatically in the financial analysis. This creates a huge value for the companies that are working for us, because it means that right at the very beginning, in the scouting phase, when they're looking for a project, they can immediately assess whether that project could be profitable for them and also for the investors that are backing them, or not, or it's better to simply put it aside and go to another one. So here the whole concept goes around comparing different projects, seeing which one is more viable and more profitable, and therefore making an informed decision. I believe that in such an industry where we work on, making an informed decision, especially for executives at the company, is really the key. And so if you can make those decisions prior to the execution, well, in that case, of course, it will help you not only being more cost efficient, being faster, but at the same time, it will actually help you for real, making a decision that is completely data driven. We don't like assumptions. And I believe that no one that works in renewable energy sector like to assume events from happening. We all want to make the decision as accurate as possible. And that is why, at Rated Power, we integrated a financial analysis tool to allow companies to be clear on this.
Mhm. Exactly. I think the decision making process is literally the most hardest thing in every single company, right? Because when we're looking at decision making, it really depends from a company to a company, but it should be, as you said, data driven, which I like the most. We shouldn't really have like an assumption of because of XYZ reasons, we're going to have this, and especially finances, right? We cannot have assumptions when we are having a renewable project based in any kind of a country that is going well based on assumption or even like certain kind of news. For example, they are having a lot of projects, they're expanding currencies, etc. Because this is how companies really, they need to understand that there should be kind of a software, there should be kind of a numbers that based on XYZ factors we will have this, not because we saw something on the news that they're having a lot of projects going on, and then we assume that because they have a lot of projects going on we need to join them, and then this is how we make revenue. Sadly, there's a lot of, as I said, it really depends from a company to a company, but we really need to have this decision making process based on numbers. And of course, the
Absolutely.
more people you have on the table, the more complex it is. So as
Yeah.
soon if we, if everyone, have a table where every single employee is on the table and we have a certain kind of presentation that this is the numbers, this is what we're expecting according to the numbers, it will even build a more psychological impact to the team itself and to have a less of a debate based on personal opinions, which make the
Absolutely.
process easier and it's much more efficient as well because everyone has their personal experience and their personal background as well. So and the
Absolutely.
more seniors they are, the more it clashes because everyone is much more senior, right? So everyone has a specific opinion. So that's why
100% always
me
happens
myself,
indeed.
exactly. Me myself, I always like data-driven results that we are moving based on the data.
Yeah,
Even
always.
and we always say numbers don't lie, right? So even if you want to debate, you technically can't debate because we have the numbers. So it will make you automatically kind of trust the process itself.
Yeah, and
And
Karam, if I may add on this, because I really like the fact that you touched upon the decision-making process and how crucial it is within companies to have a clear and very efficient decision-making processes within team. I believe that there is also an aspect that most of the time gets really underestimated, how efficient, you can provide those data to decision makers in order for them to debate and talk about those data and take informed decisions. One of the things that I think characterizes Rated Power also in this is the idea of being a multi-user tool. So being a cloud-based platform where the access to the users is unlimited, so it's not a user-based license, but the idea is that the whole team will have access to it. It means that you can create a very integrated and efficient chains within your own team. It means that the engineering team, executives, and also a potential financial department will have access to the tool at the same exact moment. This clearly allows them to see the same exact picture and at the same time focus on their task, taking the work that has been done by a colleague and bringing it to completion. This, create an imaginable value for decision makers because it allows to have a very integrated workflow where you can really take the decisions in concert with your own team. And that's, I think, where really, we say that magic happens, and you don't have a decision making process that, as you said, is based on opinion, so it can create flaws, inefficiencies. We see those things happening every day. So, being able to get your own team all working on the same platform, that's where really you can improve any kind of decision making procedure within a company. So I'm glad you touched on this point, because that makes indeed very, very sense for Radiant Power as a decision making tool indeed.
No, exactly. 100%. I also wanted to add, I just had a thought of something, ML. You see, because we're talking about emerging markets, right? And we're talking about the Balkans. I really wanted to ask, like, let's say, for example, that a company, they don't really want to work in a software because they think that they have enough seniors within the team, right? And this is where it's much more complicated because it's an emerging market. They think that they have enough seniors with a high level of experience, let's say 20, 30 years within the board management, that can make decisions based on, of course, assumptions because they have more experience, right? So I really want to touch upon that. How can you navigate this, right? How can you persuade it that no, you really need the software, of course, even if you have an experience, because you can still make not bad but mistakenly have a mistake in your assumptions, right, based on XYZ factors. Because when we're talking about emerging markets, most of their projects is based on assumptions, and it's based on seniors, that because of that specific employee or employees have a 30, 20, 40 years of an experience, and they sit on one table, they make their assumptions based on their experience and the projects they have worked on, and then they take it from there. So how can we persuade these, let's say, investors or these company owners, that even when you have the seniors in the room, you need a software to just back up the data and to just put everyone online, and to see and to showcase that, okay, we can go with this plan as well, based with our assumption and our own opinions, let's say.
Absolutely, and that's indeed a great also like point of discussions that we have with the companies that we are talking every day with. Of course, the idea of implementing new tools, it's always a bit scary at the beginning. People like to rely on their personal knowledge, as it should, because of course the experience definitely helps in such an industry. What I will focus here, and what I always tell, the decision makers, but also the senior engineers that we are speaking with every day, is the how. Because of course, you can reach a decision with or without the software. That is not really the difference that we are making. We are not, saying that without our software you cannot reach a decision. The important is how. How you make that decision is the real game changer, in terms of how you make it in terms of time, how you make it in terms of the variables that you're taking into consideration, how you make it in terms of at what stage you can make that decision. Because just imagine gathering the data, it's a process that is really time consuming. And the sooner you make it, the sooner then you can be facilitated in taking that decision. If you have a tool that empowers you to change that how and making it better, it means that you can rely on your own experience and at the same time simply making it even faster. On the contrary, what we have seen is that usually experienced users that have a lot of decades of background in the renewable energy industries are actually the ones that enjoy using the tool the most. Why? Because they can really, navigate through the different functionalities in a matter of seconds. So the problem here and the main focus is on how you make that decision. It's not the decision in itself. If you can make it faster, if you can make it more efficient, and if you can make it in concert with your whole team, then it's clear that your company will also have a much easier way to bring that project to completion, rather than simply basing everything on your own calculation or your own experience. We need to look at rated power as a sort of empowering tool.
Mm-hmm. 100%. No, I mean, thank you for the insightful answer. I mean, of course, it can help, of course, with digital, with digitalization, with decision making, with everything as well. I'm just taking a look at my notes, because it's a very complex kind of a topic on how it can help decision making when you have seniors in the room, right? Because they have their own assumptions, they they have a lot of experience and numerous amount of projects as well, all across the world. So that's why I wanted to touch up regarding that point. But also regarding the last question we have for this webinar, I wanted to ask, like, what's your outlook for what I said before, the digitalization of the solar value chain in the Balkans over the next 3 5 years? There's a lot of projects going on. There's even a lot of international rules, regulations, legalizations, etc. during in the Balkans or even in the EU itself. And there's a lot of things changing, especially in 2025. And there's a lot of things changing internationally. The agreements of the even countries itself, not even companies, but even countries. There's a lot of international agreements going on. But I want you to have two different answers regarding Greece and regarding the Balkans region as an area, because Greece has a lot of specific kind of projects going on, and they have their own kind of a legalization, their own regulation regarding their specific region, and they have a lot of solar projects going on, right? But I want you to speak, for example, regarding the Balkans. What do you see is going on in the Balkans in the next 3 5 years regarding solar projects, and even Greece? And let's see, hopefully with the digitalization, with the regularization, of course, with everything regarding the Balkans, how the software of rated power can help at the end.
Absolutely. And I will say that the future outlook is always really important to evaluate, not only for companies like us that are trying to stay ahead when it comes to digitalization and basically digital tools, but also for all the companies that are working in the industry. Touching on digitalization, I think it will not only help, of course, to boost the solar value chain, but I think it's a trend right now. It's an established trend. To paraphrase the words that our chief innovation officer said a few weeks ago to us here in the office, digitalization and the employment and the deployment of digital tools has become such a standard and a trend right now that we are looking at a situation where either you try to adapt and follow this trend, or you can really suffer potential setbacks when it comes to your workflow, when it comes to your projects, and also the long-term planning of a company. And in terms of the solar industry, I think that we really see a lot of potential going on in the Balkans, a lot of challenges that I will touch upon in a second. But I think that, especially, looking at the importance and how countries are really moving to fund those projects and to expand solar energy capacity, I believe that there's going to be only an increased emphasis on digital transformation and also on how solar can be beneficial. Touching, for example, upon Greece, if we look at the numbers, since we talked a lot about the numbers, in 2024, Greece added more than 2.6 gigawatt of PV plants, bringing the total around 9.6 gigawatts at the end of the year. So this really, show a projection and a trend that is really striking, because it is really not only adding solar capacity, but it means that solar and renewable energies are really taking over what we are calling the traditional sources of energy. not mentioning again, as I was saying before, the Greek government setting very ambitious standards for the renewable energy capacity at the end of 2030. And I truly believe that if you couple this with the European Commission's investments, and even the European Investment Bank that has released 200 million of funding since 2020 for digital project aimed at improving digital skills and digital capacities, for example. Of course, we have a very, very positive outlook, and not only for Greece. Just to mention other datas, Bulgaria, Slovenia are expected to lead this expansion to reach more than 2 gigawatts in terms of installed capacity. So we can see that the numbers that governments are setting, but they're also following through. It's not just an objective. We can really see how countries are following through those. Brings a very, very positive outlook for the next years, and I believe Balkans are going to be one of the most fast growing regions within Europe. However, of course, this comes with challenges, because we cannot also deny that challenges are going to play a role. We are still observing, when we speak with companies, a very profound lack sometimes of policy certainty. That is really hampering sometimes what is the expansion in the region. Regional national policies, of course, are really complicated, and it's hard to really set out those straight goals. And therefore, bureaucracy, we know in Europe, is a very big topic, and that can hamper this growth. So we really need to do a concerted effort to try to make those projects and those expansion, this energy transition, easier for companies, easier for consumers, easier for national governments to actually boost that capacity. At the same time, we're seeing, for example, grid, a lack of investment sometimes in grid facilities and infrastructures, especially in some countries. I've spoken a lot about Greece, but we're seeing, for example, in Montenegro, in North Macedonia, there is a lot of investments to be done. But of course, at the same time, energy and any transition that is, called in that way cannot come without challenges. So, in face of these challenges, I think governments are moving really well. And I believe that the region is poised to be a center of excellence for the years to come. That's for sure.
100%, Emil. I mean, there's a lot of things going on within the region itself, and that's why there's a lot of solar projects going on, a lot of regulations coming out, and this is why I always say that research is everything. You really need to understand the market, and then have the software based on your needs, of course. And then every software, every region, every market needs their own research, of course, to do. And then based on the research that you did and the software results from these numbers, you can go and expand to that specific region/market as well. And of course, having the digitalization, the reports, the paperwork, which is the most important thing in the Balkans, can really help you, having a quicker way to invest in the Balkans and to have your projects in a faster way. And of course, we have Emil Trippin speaking during the ninth Balkans Energy Summit on April 30th, and he's going to present us more about the software and boosting PV, of course, and BESS, profitability and decision making through digitalization more. So, of course, if you would like to hear him speaking and having this presentation regarding about the software of rated power, feel free to join us in the ninth Balkans Energy Summit. And Emil, I would like to thank you for joining us during this presentation regarding clean energy and transition.
Thank you, much appreciated.
No worries at all. If anyone has any questions regarding the rated power software, please reach out directly on LinkedIn for Emil. And hopefully we will see you on the ninth Balkans Energy Summit. And we wish you a great day ahead. And thank you, Emil, once again for joining us. I have a great day ahead, and we will see each other during the Ninth Balkans Ever Energy Summit as well.
Absolutely. Make sure you're going to be there. And thank you so much, Karam, for hosting me and for everyone that connected.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone, and see you soon. Thank you.
Yep.